Hello everyone, this is Daughter Darkness, and today I'm going to be talking about NieR. That is the original NieR on PS3, which you could also call NieR Gestalt. I played through the entire game fairly recently, sort of since Christmas, and I've played all the endings and all of that stuff, and I wanted to make a video about it. I never got the chance to make one about Automata because when I played it, it was when I wasn't making videos. So as a bit of context, I've played NieR Automata. I haven't played any of the Replicant series going into this game. I will play Replicant 1 and 3 certainly in the future, and once I do, I will definitely want to make a video about them too. But right, to the matter at hand, it can be a bit difficult to properly review a Yoko Taro game because they're kind of insane in a good way. And it's great and a great experience, but it's kind of hard to define. But I'm going to do my best here. So, just as a bit of a warning, I know that this game isn't, like, huge and one of those things that everyone's played, so I will be talking spoilers, but I will do so at the end of the video. So, I will give a warning before I go into spoiler territory, so if you haven't played NieR, you're okay to watch this until that later section when I will give the warning. But anyway, let's go. And let's start with gameplay, kind of get that out of the way, because gameplay is really not this game's strong point. It's functional, and that's about all I can really give it credit for. It's pretty mindless, it's pretty generic, a hack and slash, when you're basically either mashing square or using various magic attacks that do give a little bit of variety to the gameplay, but once you've worked it out, it's still pretty simple and pretty generic. There's not anything offensively bad in the gameplay, but in terms of the actual combat, it's not so memorable. The problem is, in the second and third playthroughs, your character has obviously leveled up from the first playthrough. The enemies don't. Unlike in Automata when they did, the enemies remain at the same level, so enemies that you might have had a bit of trouble with in the first playthrough are a breeze in the other playthroughs. And in terms of the weapons and crafting system and all that, I think again it's okay. There's nothing special about it. It's fairly similar to Automata's, but you don't really need it because, as I say, you're leveling up and the enemies aren't in the end, so you're basically just going to become overpowered however strong your weapons are. And in terms of the side quests, which were a big part of the appeal of Automata, here in terms of goals, they're fairly similar, sort of fetch quests, basic stuff like that, but there isn't the world building, with rare exceptions. Most of them are fairly simple. They do lead to some amusing conversations, which is nice, but really their main purpose is to get you money so you can buy weapons to unlock the final endings. So yeah, that's it in terms of gameplay. It's really not this game's strong point, but again, it's not horrible. But yeah, onto the world. So design-wise, it's fairly bleak. Obviously a deliberate choice. This is not like a world in its prime, but I think the world is interesting and diverse enough. All of the locations feel different, and the people there have a different way of acting, a different culture, and all that sort of stuff, from, you know, the peaceful village that you start off with, and then the junk heap, which is full of machines, and Facade, which is obviously rule-dominated, and they've got like 100,000 rules for really random stuff and all that. So all of those locations are really good, and that's one of the great things in this game, is that it's in a bleak, depressing world, but it's a varied one, and every time you go somewhere new, it's still interesting to experience that place. And I think a lot of this is down to the music, because gameplay-wise, all the washed-out colours and everything, it works for what they're going with, but the music is what really brings everything to life. And I think the biggest and best example of this, in my opinion, is the Ares theme, which is just so kind of empty and haunting, and it just works so perfectly with what they're going across there. So all that stuff, great. Now in terms of the characters, NieR is obviously the main character, although he'll take on your name if you choose to do that. I did without realising it was going to be his name. I just thought it was going to be the name of the file, so Xander was the main protagonist in NieR, and I think he's a pretty good protagonist. He is probably the least interesting out of all the main characters, but again he serves his job as being our entry point into the world, and you can obviously sympathise with what he's doing. He's not that bothered about saving the world or anything like that, he just wants to protect his daughter. and of course his friends. He brings all of the other characters together. He's the glue that holds them together. Otherwise they'd probably end up killing each other. So yeah, I think he's fine, but the other main party member who's with us all the time is Grimoire Weiss, of course. And I think he's probably the most entertaining of all the characters because of how sarcastic and snarky he is constantly in every situation, and it's just really entertaining to watch. Most of my laughs in the game came from either him or Kaine, and I think as a book, the game does a good job of making me feel invested in the character of a book, and that's no mean feat. In terms of Kaine, again, she's really entertaining, despite the fact that she has to swear in every other sentence, or maybe because of that. But despite that, she obviously has the deeper meaning with the backstory that we learn about in a novel that they decide to give you in the middle of the game. But again, it's a good job of making me care about someone who is really rude and obnoxious and all that sort of stuff, but she's got something deeper behind her. And I think that's the thing that Yoko Taro does really well with his storytelling, is these are characters that you're not supposed to care about, but you do. And then we go to Emil, who is the nicest of all of the main characters, definitely. He is just a young boy, and he brings out the best in all the others, certainly Kaine. And as the youngest and most innocent and naive member of their group, he brings out the best in them as a group, because they are flawed people, but they will protect each other, and no more so than protecting Emil whenever possible, even though he's got pretty great powers of his own. Okay, so that's the end of the safe section. I will be talking about spoilers from when I say now. In terms of recommendation, if you played NieR Automata and you liked it, 100% play this game. Gameplay wise it's not nearly as good, but the story is still great, and it's the same storyteller, so you'll like this style of storytelling. If you haven't played Automata, I think you might be better off playing that first, because it is so much more accessible because the gameplay is actually good. But this is still definitely a game worth playing. But anyway, spoilers starting now. So part 1 of the game, I think, is pretty good. It's mostly just going around the world and exploring all these different cities and areas that I think is nice. I mentioned before that I really liked all the different locations, but it's towards the end of part 1. That's when the story really kicks into gear, and that's when everything gets really interesting. You're not just exploring the world finding sealed verses anymore, there's a genuine conflict that you've actually got to deal with constantly. So I think the end of part 1 is definitely good, but then we move on to part 2, and the beginning obviously is focused on Emil, and we see his transformation there from a boy into whatever the hell it is that he turns into. And honestly, this scene is the first scene in this game that really kind of hit me in the feels. I think it's just the idea of Emil being turned into this horrible looking thing and NieR trying to console him. It's just something that really kind of hit home somehow. But then we move on into part 2 and it's sort of revisiting all the worlds, everything's fine. And in terms of the ending, it's the typical Yoko Taro craziness that we all love. We've got this basic goal, we're here to rescue Yona, and that's all great, but then you find out about the fact that we're not really humans and all that kind of stuff. After defeating Deviler and Popola, you then go and fight the Shadow Lord, and that's a pretty nice, emotional final battle. Because again, while you are saving the world by defeating the Shadow Lord, you're saving Yona, and that's what you're there for, and it just makes it feel that much more personal. And speaking of personal, the final battle of ending C and D is a lot more heartbreaking, because you're given a pretty awful choice of either NieR kills Kaine to put her out of her misery, or NieR sacrifices himself for Kaine. And that's not just him dying, he would be erased from existence. No one else would remember him at all. And it does make a genuinely hard-hitting and emotional finale. So, ultimately this game, it's not the best in terms of gameplay, but the story is really, really good. Yoko Taro has his own unique style of storytelling that is just so engaging, and I love it so much. So yeah, again, I would definitely recommend this game, especially if you played Automata and loved it. the way that I did before playing this game. So once I play Drakengard, I will be reviewing that as well, but for now please leave your thoughts. Have you played NieR, and if so, what did you think of it? Please leave those thoughts in the comment section below the video, and while you're down there please like this video if you did, and if you liked it then check out my other videos and subscribe to this channel. And as always, thank you for watching.